Hello. Let's take a look at adding a data file to an eHealth database. If you open your one-click GUI and you drill down into Tasks and Information, Database Management, and you highlight Database Status, it will tell you information about your database. Now we use Oracle as a database, and the database is made up of table spaces. And here you can see the list of table spaces. Each one has a unique name. Each table space is made up of data files, and the data files are the flat files that live on your hard drive that actually contain the information that's in your database. You'll notice that in the table space list we have NHData01 and NHData02. And then if we come down here, we'll see that there are data files to go with NHData01 and NHData02. And for each one that's added, we will append a letter to it. So the first one was NHData01A, and then I added a new one, which became NHData01B. We're going to add another one, which will become NHData01C. Now, why would you need to add a new data file? Well, these files start off small, and they're allowed to auto-extend. You can see over here that they're set to yes, but they can only reach a maximum of 32 gigs. And at that point, eHealth can no longer write to them because they're basically full. And you'll see one of two things. If you're actively monitoring your table space values here, you'll see that these consumption guides over on the far right become red to let you know that you're rapidly running out of space. And then you can come down to the list of data files and you'll see anything approaching 32 gigs over here and approaching 0 gigs over here under the free space column will need to be replaced. So let's take a look at the actual files. For me, I have my eHealth database on the root of C in EHDB. And inside of there, we'll see that there's an Aura data file. And then the next folder is named after the database instance. eHealth is the default, and so mine is named eHealth. That's also called the SID of the database. So when we add the data files, they actually go in Aura Data eHealth. And here we see them here, NHData01 and NHData02, exactly as we saw in the list of data files in the GUI. But when we run the command to add them, it will actually append Aura data and the SID name to the path that we provide. So for us, we're only going to provide the path of C EHDB. So I'll copy that and put it into buffer. So again, it'll add Aura data. So if you were to give it the full path, Aura data, eHealth, you'd end up with another folder called Aura data and then another one called eHealth under that, and your DBF files would not be together anymore. And that just makes it harder to manage. It's not the end of the world, but it's an inconvenience to you. So again, that's where we're going to put it. So I'll minimize this, and let's take a look at how you would go about adding a data space, a data file. So the command that we use is called nhmanagedb space. And if you use a -H, it'll give you usage. And for us, the relevant switches that we're going to use are, we're going to use evaluate, which basically checks the syntax of the command you're running and makes sure that there's space available for wherever your target is to go ahead and add whatever you're adding. We're going to add because that's our goal. We'll use the new path switch and point it at the C EHDB directory. And then the name of the table space we're appending. In this case, we're going to use NHData01. And then the size, this is the size that it starts out as, and remember it'll automatically grow up to 32 gigs. So let's go back to the bottom of this. And I've already run this command. And so what we're looking at is nhmanagedb space, that's the actual binary. We're using the evaluate switch. We're using the add switch. The new path is C EHDB. And the table space we want to append is NHData01. You don't need to give the data file a name because that'll be handled automatically by Oracle. And then the size will start out at 2000 megs or 2 gigs. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run this. And we see that the evaluation was successful, which means that there's no errors in our syntax and there's enough room on our target C EHDB to go ahead and add that file. So if we run the same command again and remove the evaluate, this time it'll actually create that file. And this will take a little longer because it's going to update Oracle and it's going to tell it, look, there's a new data file. It's going to decide what the name will be and then update the tables in Oracle so it knows where to write the data. While we're waiting for that, let's take a look at what would happen. Some of the common errors if you actually let the data file fill up and eHealth was no longer able to store data. So you'd see some of these 3 Oracle errors here, and the errors would be unable to extend temp segment, unable to extend index, or unable to create initial extent for segment. That's the most common one. You see that a lot. And the most common symptom is the way that people notice this problem is that they'll run a report and they'll be missing data in the report. So eHealth is up, eHealth is polling, but eHealth has nowhere to store the information it's collecting because the data file is full. Okay. So what's actually in a data file? The most common ones are NHData01, which contains the raw poll data that eHealth collects, NHData02, which contains the rolled up data that eHealth collects. So at the end of the day, it turns 1 hour samples into 1 day samples, and at the end of the week, it turns 1 day samples into 1 week samples. And so that's what rolled up data is. And then the index, NHIndex01, contains index information so you can navigate the DB. Notice the difference when we append a data file to NHData01 or 02, it'll give them a letter of A, B, C, what have you. But with NHIndex01, it'll actually create NHIndex02, NHIndex03, and so on. So by now, our command should have finished, and it did. It created the DBF file, and it appended the LCF, which is the information configuration file for Oracle itself. So why don't we take a look? We'll leave this status page and come back to it so it refreshes. And we'll scroll down a bit to the data file list. And we see now I already had NHData01A and NHData01B. And now we've appended it with NHData01C. And we see that their size is the initial 2 gigs that I set them for, and the auto extend is set to yes. So these files will not be used until they're needed, but now that they're there, there'll be no need to worry about them filling up that quickly. It's not always necessary to proactively add them as I did here. I was doing it as a demo, but when the consumption GUI turns red, or if you know that you're planning on adding a large number of new discoveries, that would be the time to go ahead and do this rather than waiting until it fills up. If it fills up, in the time that it takes you to notice that it's filled up and get a new one added, any information that's been collected is lost because there was nowhere for eHealth to put it. So this is a good place to be monitoring. You should check your table spaces on the database status page pretty regularly. I'd also like to take a quick look in here, and we'll drill down to EHDB or data eHealth, and we'll see the NHData01C file that we just created and the date 11/10. So we know that that's brand new. And that's pretty much the gist of why you would add a data file and how to go about doing it. Thank you. I hope this is helpful.